What's up? It's Friday. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining us for another afternoon devotion. I hope you guys are having a good day. Looking forward to the weekend. So, as always, we want to start with what we're thankful for today. One, I'm just thankful it's Friday. It's the weekend, and I'm excited for that and getting to spend some time with my family. I'm also thankful for sleep. Honestly, partly because I didn't get a lot last night, and I'm feeling it. But it's a reminder to me that I'm grateful that we have some and that I can get more tonight, and that God gives us that as a blessing for us. I also had kind of I read an interesting quote just last week that said, hang on, let me find it. It says, God gave us sleep to remind us we are not him. That's by Charles Spurgeon, an English pastor. God gave us sleep to remind us we are not him, which, it's just sort of a cool thought, and reminds me of our children's message from this past week about how God does not sleep, which is a pretty amazing thing. So anyway, let me know what you are thankful for today as you're looking ahead to the weekend. Let's see. I think I may have some coming in. Eric is thankful for Ripstick, and I know that's been something that you guys have enjoyed recently. And Alex thankful for a brother. So I'm thankful for you guys and how you always check in with that stuff. So real quick, on the topic of thankfulness, next week is going to be Thankfulness Week. And what that means is if you will let me know what you are thankful for, then you get a quarter. It's that simple. So we'll still have our quarter team games, but bonus for sharing what you're thankful for. So keep that in mind as we head into next week, and hope you guys will be here and join us for that. All right. All right. So let's get to quarter team games. And yes, you'll notice I'm holding up 2 quarters today because there are 2 quarters on the line today. But before we get to today's question, let's talk about last time. Last time our question was, how many World Series titles have the Cardinals won? The correct answer is 11, and we had 2 people that were only 1 off. So Tim had guessed 12, and Daniel guessed 10. They were each only 1 off, and so each of you Tossi brothers gets a quarter on your total. So congrats for that. Today, we got another This Day in History. 75 years ago today, on June 26th of 1945, as World War II is wrapping up, the United Nations sort of got its birth. Okay, the Charter of the United Nations was signed 75 years ago today. So 2 questions for you today. First question, how many nations signed that charter on that date 75 years ago? So how many nations were in the United Nations when it started? And how many nations are in the United Nations now? So in your guess, give me 2 numbers. How many nations were in the United Nations at the beginning, and how many countries are in it now? Okay, so there's your questions for today. So let me know what you think. You can leave it in the comments, send it to me, and we'll look forward to that. So anyway, all right, let's get to our devotion itself. We're up to number 8 in the 10 Commandments, talking about do not steal. So look, this is one that, again, like the last couple, it seems kind of obvious. We know what it means. We know what to do. We know what not to do. It's kind of just obvious. There's just something like, okay, I can just say, okay, don't steal, and we're done. But I want us to think about, okay, why and how. Let's answer those questions, okay? So why should we not steal, besides just the obvious fact that God says in this commandment, don't steal, right? For one thing, stealing, theft, whatever you want to call it, is rooted in selfishness, right? And we know that that is not what God desires of us. So if we're going to try and live a life that's not selfish, then we're going to live a life that's not stealing from others, right? If we're stealing something, we're taking something that belongs to someone else, that's usually a sign that we are overvaluing material possessions. We can read in Matthew chapter 6, especially verses 19 through 21, where he talks about these things about where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. if we're so worried about material possessions that we're taking something that belongs to someone else, then those things are too valuable to us. And this is not just you took something. There's a heart issue behind this that's an issue. And so we want to be aware of that and not fall into that trap that I'm sure Satan would love to drag us into. So be aware of that. But beyond that as well, look, stealing is not loving, right? We've talked about how these last 6 commandments can all sort of be summed up in, love your neighbor as yourself. And actually, Paul says that explicitly in Romans 13:9. He sort of lists some of these commandments and says that, obeying these things is part of love your neighbor as yourself. And so if we're trying to live a life of love that God has called us to, then we're not going to be taking stuff from someone else that doesn't belong to us. And love your neighbor as yourself, golden rule, right? If you don't want somebody else doing that to you, then you're not going to do that to them. It's that simple. So again, I know those are fairly obvious, but they're good reminders to us that there's a good set of reasons behind what God has laid out for us here in the 10 Commandments. So the other question to us is how? How do we do this? How do we live a life that is characterized by, being forthright and not taking stuff that doesn't belong to us? The obvious thing is, if it's an item from a store or an item that belongs to another person, we're not taking that. That's pretty obvious. But there's some other ways that we can steal that are also not okay. There's such a thing as time theft. I mean, if you have a job, you're getting paid to do that job. And while you're there, you should be doing that. And if you're not, that's like stealing time. And so we want to be aware of that and not falling into that trap. I don't know that it's as big a deal anymore with the way that music and movies are streamed now. I know several years ago it was a big deal with teens where you're basically pirating music or movies. We need to make sure that we're not doing things like that. Like if we're gaining access to media like that, we need to do the right thing because God wants us to, and for the artists that are producing that stuff, to not steal that stuff, but to make sure that we're paying what's proper and right for those sorts of things. So that's something to think about that maybe is beyond what a lot of the world around us thinks about. One more for you. In Malachi chapter 3, God says that when we don't tithe as he has called us to, we are robbing him. Now, that's pretty strong language, but we recognize the commands that God has given us. We recognize that all that we have is ultimately his, and we're just stewards. We're taking care of it for a time. We are called to give at least 10% of that back to him. And if we don't, we are taking something, in essence, that belongs to God. And that's stealing. God calls that robbing him. So I know that not all of us at this point are, have high earning jobs. I know that for a lot of you, that's the case at this moment in life. But when we do earn money, then we need to make sure that we're tithing on that. That's part of what God has asked us to do. So hopefully that's some good, helpful insights into not just do not steal, but why we don't steal and how we don't steal. So anyway, don't forget about our quarter teen questions. So let me know your thoughts on that. Enjoy your weekend. Looking forward to seeing you guys on Sunday morning at church, hopefully. And then don't forget, next week is Thankfulness Week, where not only you have a quarter online for quarter teen games, but you can earn one for sharing what you're thankful for. I want us to do that together. So anyway, that's it for today. Like I said, enjoy your weekend. Love you guys. We'll see you on Monday for Do Not Lie. Bye.